everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Madeline and I create knitting content here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make knit scrunchies. So these are great projects just to learn some new skills. Also, they just make really cute hair accessories and they are great gifts as well. The other nice thing about this project is that I just used leftover yarn to make both of these. So there's no need to go out and purchase extra yarn to make these. So the way I knit it is it's actually knit basically seamlessly. So it's knit right onto the scrunchie. So it starts off with a provisional cast on, and then you just use magic loop to continue knitting all the way around. Then lastly, I cast off using Kitchener stitch. So essentially there is no seam. You can't tell where I started or finished the scrunchie, which makes it just look really professional too. So yes, along the way, I'm going to show you each of those steps I just talked about. Down in the description box below, you're going to find the full written version of this pattern, and you're also going to find each of the video breakpoints, so that way you can fast forward or rewind if there's a section you want to skip to, or if there's somewhere you want to watch again. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. Starting off with a knitting needle, I'm using a size US 2 circular knitting needle, and you want to make sure it has at least a 24-inch cord, just because it is knit using magic loop. I'm also using a tapestry needle, a double pointed needle, only one of them, and it needs to be the same size as the circular knitting needle or smaller. So my circular knitting needle is size US 2, this one's actually a size US 0, because I found that's an easy size for me to pick up stitches with. A pair of scissors, a scrunchie, and these are just ones I've got in CVS. I do like the medium hold ones just because it is knit completely seamless, so if the scrunchie inside breaks, there's not really any way to replace it. So I just like them to be a little bit more durable. And then you're also going to need the yarn. So I recommend having about 50 to 70 yards, depending on how basically bunched up or loose you want it to be. So this one I knit out of Hue Loco in a sock yarn she has. And then this one's Shibui yarn, and this is the pebble base. Again, you need 50 to 70 yards of a fingering weight yarn. To start out, I have my yarn I'm going to be using for my scrunchie. And then I have a piece of waste yarn, and my waste yarn is the same weight as my scrunchie yarn. And then lastly, I just have my circular knitting needle. The first step is going to be to create a slip knot using the waste yarn and the yarn you're actually using for the scrunchie. So to do that, I'm just going to basically put the two strands together, and then I'm going to leave about 6 inches or so and just lay it right over my hand. And you want to grab on with your bottom 3 fingers, and now just take both strands and go up over your pointer finger, then down under, go back up to the top again, and then wrap it around one more full time. Finish off down at the bottom. So now basically you have 3 bars going across your pointer finger. I take the second one, go up over the first one, take the new second one, go up over the first one, and now grab the second one and slide it off your finger, and now we just have that little slip knot. So this slip knot we aren't actually putting onto the needle or anything, it's just so later on I can use these ends to seam and also just weave them in more easily. So once I have the slip knot on the needle, I'm just going to place that down, and I'm going to want the slip knot over towards the right hand side, both of my yarns over towards the left. I have the working yarn closest to me, and then the purple yarn, which is just my scrap yarn, furthest away from me. So now, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my yarn in my left hand, and I'm going to move the needle in my right hand. So the way I'm going to hold my yarn is first I'm just going to grab on to both strands with my bottom 3 fingers, and now I want to push back or away from myself on the scrap yarn using my pointer finger, and then push towards myself on the actual working yarn using my thumb. Now the way I'm going to position my knitting needle is I'm just going to put the knitting needle right on top of that knot, and then basically hold on to the knot with a few of my fingers. And I'm going to move the knitting needle down the center in between both of them, underneath that front strand, towards myself, and then I'm going to go over top of both strands towards the back. Now I'm going to go underneath both strands, and I'm going to take my knitting needle towards myself and up in front of that front strand, then down the center in between the two strands, and then back up behind that back strand. So now you can see I have 2 loops on my knitting needle. So I actually just cast on 2 stitches doing that movement. So every time I do one of these provisional cast on moving around the needle, it actually casts on 2. So I want to do a total of 22 stitches. So I'm going to repeat that whole set of movements 11 times. So to show it one more time, I'm going to go down the center in between both of them, towards myself. Now I'm going to go up over the top of both strands, back behind, then go underneath both strands. Going to come up in front of that one closest to me, and then down the center. So now I have 4 stitches cast on. And I'm going to continue repeating that movement until I have a total of 22 stitches cast on. Now that I've gotten to the end of now that I've finished casting on my 22 stitches, on that last one, I just want to twist my yarn around each other, just so that I make sure that I don't lose it. And I'm going to turn my work. So I now have the needle point pointed towards the right, and I'm going to take my second needle and I'm going to knit right into this whole row. So again, on that first stitch, you're going to want to make sure you keep them twisted. So basically I just have my tail going right across the front of that first stitch. I'm going to go in and knit it. And now I'm going to continue knitting all the way across this row. Now that I've finished, I'm just going to recount to make sure I still have 22. Okay, so I do still have 22. So at this point, I've already done it, but you're just going to want to cut that extra tail yarn just so it doesn't accidentally become tangled in anything later on. And now I'm going to want to turn my work. And along the bottom there, you can see the purple strand going through. So later on, we're going to go follow along that purple strand and pick up each one of those stitches again when we bind off. But for now, we're just going to leave the purple strand there. The next step is going to be to divide for magic loop. So to divide for magic loop, I'm going to pull my stitches over to my cord, and now I'm going to count 11 stitches in from the side. Once I find 11 stitches, I'm going to pull on the cord so that half my stitches end up on one needle and half the stitches end up on the other. And now as I go around the round, I'm just making sure that my cast on edge is down towards the table all the way around and that it isn't twisted anywhere. And I have my working yarn coming over the top of this back needle. So now we're going to begin the first row of magic loop. But the first step is actually going to be to take our hair elastic and put it on that front needle all the way over to the left-hand side. So to begin the magic loop, I'm going to take my back needle, or the one furthest away from me, and I'm going to pull it towards the right. And now I'm going to begin knitting right into this other needle. So I'm just going to take my working yarn from my back needle and just begin knitting with it. Now that I've gone all the way across that first side, I'm going to put my other needle point, slide it back so the stitches are on both needles again. And now again, I'm going to point both my needle points towards the right again. I'm going to want my working yarn, again, coming out over top of my back needle. And now this is an extra step. You don't usually have to do this when doing magic loop. But again, I'm going to take my hair elastic and I'm going to put it over towards the left-hand side of that front needle. Now again, I'm going to pull through or pull towards the right that back needle or the one with the yarn attached to it. And now I'm just going to begin knitting right into the front side of the other needle. Now again, I'm going to rethread my needle back in. Going to make my needle points face towards the right, and I have my working yarn coming out up over the back needle. I'm going to rearrange my scrunchie so that my hair elastic's over towards the left. And now I'm going to continue repeating those sets of 2. Keep on going around and rearranging my elastic each time until I have basically the amount of scrunchie that I'd like on my hair elastic. Here's another example of another scrunchie I'm working on. So the nice thing about it is I can decide how bunched up I'd like it to be. So if I'd like it to be really full, I could just keep on knitting more and more and then bunch it up more and more. Or if I don't want to knit as much, I can just leave it a lot looser. So I've now finished knitting the scrunchie to the length I'd like it to be. And once I finish, I want to make sure that when I pull my hair tie back to over to the left edge and I untwist everything, so it's laying flat. So I'm just going to make a circle with my scrunchie. I want to make sure the waste yarn is coming out this right-hand side of this other edge. So basically I have my working yarn coming out the right-hand side of the top needle, and then I want both of my strands of yarn, my waste yarn, coming out the right-hand side of the other side. And now I'm just gonna basically pick it up so that I'm looking at this waste yarn, and I'm gonna cut this tail so it has about 18 inches left on it that I can seam with. And for this next step, I'm going to need my double pointed needle, and I'm also going to need a tapestry needle. So to start, I'm going to start at the inner edge of where these 2 pieces of waste yarn are meeting. And I want to get the side that lines up with the top half here. So basically I have this top half and this top half. So I'm going to start seaming those 2 together. I'm going to pick up the first 11 stitches. So you just kind of pull on the, I had to switch my purple strand to a pink strand to be able to see it a little bit more clearly. But I'm going to pull on this waste yarn. And just go across and pick up each one of those stitches until I have a total of 11 on this double pointed needle. So now I'm up to 11. Just gonna double check that I didn't miss any. Okay, I didn't. So now I'm just gonna pull that pink strand out of those first 11 just to make it a little bit easier. Now I'm going to thread my tapestry needle with the strand of yarn that I was just knitting with. It's kind of like my working yarn that I had just cut. Now there are going to be 2 needles that I want to be using here. So I want the one that previously had my working yarn attached to it that I just cut. and my double pointed needle. So for this third needle, I'm just gonna move that out to the side. And now I want to begin working Kitchener stitch on these two sets of stitches. So Kitchener stitch has two setup stitches. First, I'm going to go through the first stitch on my front needle as if I'm going to purl. Then I'm going to go through the first stitch on my back needle as if I'm going to knit. And I leave both those stitches on the needles. And now there's a 4-stitch repeat. So I'm going to show it once and then I'll just put it up on the screen. So the first step is to go through the first stitch on the front needle as if you're going to knit. Slide that one off the needle. Go through the new first stitch on the front needle as if you're going to purl. Leave that one on the needle. Go through the first stitch on the back needle as if you're going to purl. Slide that off the back needle. Go through the new first stitch on the back needle as if you're going to knit. Leave that one on the needle. So now I'm going to repeat that over and over again until I just have these last 2 stitches over here remaining. So I now have those 2 stitches remaining, one on the front, one on the back, and I just finished a step 4. So I just threaded my needle knitwise through the new first stitch in the back needle and left it on. So now I'm just going to work a step 1, which is where I just go knitwise through the first stitch on the front needle, slide that one off. So now I have nothing on my double pointed needle and just 1 stitch on my circular knitting needle. So now I want to get this 1 stitch that's still left on my circular knitting needle back over with the other stitches that are still left on the cord. So I'm just going to pull on that one and turn over my work so that now I have the cord facing me. And I like to have the cord in the back and then the stitches I pick up in the front. So I'm going to thread my knitting needle back onto those stitches. So now again, I have my circular knitting needle. It's pointing towards the right and it's further away from me than the stitches I'm about to pick up. So now I'm going to go across and I'm going to pick up the remaining 11 stitches that are on this pink waste yarn. So now I've picked up those 11 stitches and I've just grabbed my tapestry needle again. It still has the yarn threaded through it. And on the other side I had finished right after I did a step 1. So now I'm going to work on a step 2. So that's going to be purl through the first stitch on the front needle and then leave it on. So mine's actually twisted, so I'm just going to untwist it. Purl through that first stitch on the front needle, leave it on. Now I'm going to purl through the first stitch on the back needle, slide it off. Now I'm going to go knitwise through the first stitch on the back needle and leave it on. So now I'm back to step 1 again. So I'm just going to put Kitchener stitch steps back up on the screen and continue repeating that until I've gone all the way across. Now again, I have those last 2 stitches remaining and I just finished the step 4. So now I'm just going to go through the first stitch on my front needle as if to knit, slide it off, and then go through the first stitch on my back needle as if to purl and slide it off. Now that I've finished, I do have a little gap remaining at the beginning, so I'm just going to use my tapestry needle and the little bit of yarn that I have left over to seam that one up. And now I'm going to weave in both of these ends. Here are the finished scrunchies. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them down below. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.